right, here we go. Well, welcome to another edition of Art Brunch, where we, of course, explore the wisdom of the arts, spirituality, and the great ideas. I'm really excited about this new series. It's on the art pilgrimage. Today is going to be introducing the whole concept of an art pilgrimage. When we hear the word pilgrimage, we normally think of a long trek on foot to a sacred site of a particular religion. Now, often that site is a large cathedral or other religious building. Those sacred buildings are almost always a work of art in themselves. The writer, Alain de Botton, some of you will recognize that name because I've referred to him before. He's one of my favorite writers. Alain de Botton, whose ideas we're going to discuss also in this series, he referred to art museums as, quote, our cathedrals. And by our, he means people not affiliated with a particular faith, as he is. Art has played a significant role in my own personal and spiritual growth. Now, some people view art as purely decoration or an investment, but it's far, far more than that. There is a Catholic organization here in Denver called Windows to the Divine, which sponsors a wide variety of art programs. Their website states, quote, we see art differently. Through the beauty of art, Windows to the Divine promotes patronage. As patrons, we seek to inspire everyone to become a collector and affirm the special calling of artists. For this organization, and as I have discovered on my own, art is that window to the sacred. It first happened to me here, the Philadelphia Art Museum. I was a young seminary student who used to frequent the Philadelphia Art Museum on Sundays because it was free on that day at the time. I was in my early 20s and I had just started to enjoy art and began to intuit that art just might be more than mere decoration. During one visit, I saw an advertisement for a special showing of the Dr. Alfred C. Barnes' famed collection of Impressionist and Post-Impressionist works. I bought a ticket because the list of artists in the show was very impressive. I was treated to works like this. The way the meadow and the trees were rendered left me spellbound. So did the way Cézanne expressed the landscape. And I felt immediate empathy with Picasso's poor ascetic. And I wanted to celebrate life with these beautiful souls in Matisse's painting. To put it bluntly, I had a profound spiritual experience at this exhibit. Now, I didn't know exactly what had happened to me, and certainly not the how of it. You see, up to that point in my life, I'd never taken any course in art history or art appreciation. But something definitely happened to me that afternoon. It was as if I had wandered into some revival meeting, but the only preaching was from the pictures on the wall. And they were in a language I didn't fully understand. But some of their message was still able to get through to me in a powerful way. I later went back to school here at the Iliff School of Theology in Denver and got another degree. This time I concentrated on what I refer to as the theology of aesthetics. Aesthetics being more about what art does to us rather than what art is. And that education I received there is the seed that planted Art Brunch. Now, this series on art pilgrimage is the beginning research for a course I'm creating on the subject, which will be available sometime in the fall. I am taking a group of some of you to France in September on an art pilgrimage. And that select group of people will receive the prototype for this course, and their feedback will help me create the final product. Now, if you have any interest in joining me on a future pilgrimage, I plan to offer more of them in 2024. And now I know all of us don't have the freedom to join some of my tours. So over the next several weeks, we are going on a virtual tour, a virtual pilgrimage, a journey to some of the wonderful museums in Europe. We will visit sites in France that our September pilgrims will be visiting. We will also visit a site in London, England. And we will finish the series in the gardens of Europe for a time of reflection about our journey. Now, to start, I would like all of us to imagine walking along this lane by the Seine River, which runs through the heart of Paris. We pass artists expressing faithfully their calling to fill canvas with wonderful imagery for the benefit of humanity. As you walk, make sure you glance at the canvases as you pass. Catch a glimpse of artists in the process of expressing something both beautiful and mysterious. Alain de Botton's wonderfully written book, The Art of Travel, and Phil Cousineau's classic, The Art of Pilgrimage, The Seeker's Guide to Making Travel Sacred, are two works that have informed many of the ideas I'll be presenting, and I highly recommend them for your library. So write these titles down. Alain de Botton doesn't tell us in his book where to travel. He gives us the how and the why of travel. In his book, he says something that may sound peculiar to some of us. He says the problem with travel is that we take ourselves with us. We take ourselves with us. That's a problem. What does he mean? Many of us may think of a visit to a special place, like a museum, the theater, the symphony, or another city, or a foreign country, as a chance to escape for a time from our mundane world. But we take our stresses, our wounds, our habits of thinking and reacting to our world with us. Isn't that so? For travel to be beneficial, worth the investment of time and money, it must offer more than escape. It must change us. The goal of any journey, brief or extensive, short or great, is to return more than when we left. Now, how do we do that? De Botton and Cousineau would both say with intentionality. That is the how that we will examine over the next several weeks. Now, Cousineau's book is a modern classic for those who want the spiritual adventure of a traditional pilgrimage. I'm going to adapt it to our purposes by simply taking the "of" out of the title. So for our context, we have the title, The Art Pilgrimage. This is for those of us who like travel, including locally to our neighborhood museum, but want to move from being a mere tourist to a pilgrim. Phil Cousineau defines a pilgrimage as, quote, a transformative journey to a sacred center. People go on pilgrimages for a variety of reasons. As an act of devotion, an act of penance, to achieve healing, to reset one's life. Most journeys are clockwise. They are with the flow of life and culture. Pilgrimages go counterclockwise. They follow the hero's path. We enter them to shake up our life, alter our way of being, vitalize something that is dormant within us. Cousineau divides his book into 7 chapters showing the various stages of the sacred journey, modeled partially on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. The first step is the longing, the inward desire to see the world differently, to be challenged and changed, to find ourselves anew and live life more fully. Then there's the call. This is pretty self-explanatory. Sometimes it arrives in a feeling of restlessness, sometimes in a dream, sometimes in a shock, a change of circumstances, a loss, a confusion, a question pursued but not resolved, a darkness. And then following that, there is the departure. We can't simply daydream about the spiritual adventure. We have to leave home. We have to buy the ticket. It might be an entry ticket for a local museum, or the cost of a hotel room in another city, or a plane ticket. Regardless, the departure is where we put skin in the game, as an investor friend of mine once put it. We put skin in the game. Now, this action might bring some fear with it, depending on the level of investment. But if we believe the archetypal pilgrim journey is based in truth, then we must trust that mysterious forces will come to our aid. William H. Murray said, concerning all acts of initiative, and I would add, and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. Well, next on our journey is the pilgrim's way. The pilgrim is not on the journey to actually learn something. At least that's not the main goal. The pilgrim is on the journey to experience something. When we enter a museum or a cathedral, we hope to experience something that transcends us. The learning part will come later when we have our journal out sitting at a cafe or on a park bench and reflect upon the experience. And then there is the stage of the labyrinth. You see, the journey will not be a straight line. All paths that lead to growth cut back. They involve treacherous terrain. We may feel lost for a time. The path is a serpentine one, and that is a fitting description since the serpent is the ancient symbol for wisdom and rebirth. Do not be afraid to get lost in the deep places of your spirit. Go ahead and make space for confusion. One thing we can count on, we won't be alone. The famous mythologist Joseph Campbell wrote, furthermore, we have not even to risk the adventure alone, for the heroes of all time have gone before us. The labyrinth is thoroughly known. We have only to follow the thread of the hero path. And where we had thought to find an abomination, we shall find a god. Where we had thought to slay another, we shall slay ourselves. Where we had thought to travel outward, we shall come to the center of our own existence. And where we had thought to be alone, we shall be with all the world. I'll pause a moment to let that sink in. The next stage is the arrival. But do we really ever arrive? Arrival may not designate a physical place. Most likely, the arrival is an aha moment. This may take place months after returning from a trip, or it may take place in the midst of the journey. When viewing a work of art, or discovering the biography of a significant person, reflecting on an afternoon spent going to deep places. The arrival may take place while writing during lunch at the cafe. And then finally, we must bring back the boon. You see, this is not simply a trip for us. I believe, and nearly all spiritual paths teach, that in order to live a fulfilling life, we must serve others in some way. You might say we have a mission. We have a responsibility to use our unique experience to enrich others. Well, before our next art brunch on May 7th, I'd like you to do something that Phil Cousineau suggests in his book. Treat yourself to a ceremonial meal sometime during the week before joining me. A ceremonial meal. Try to make it food that reminds you of travel. You may be able to make the meal yourself, or you may prefer a restaurant. Whenever I visit a Middle Eastern restaurant, I am transported. What kind of cuisine transports you to another place? I'd also like you to think about a theme or a problem you want to address on your virtual journey, a particular objective you might have. And I'd like this pilgrimage to awaken the writer in you. One thing I'm doing for all the participants in the September art pilgrimage is give them journals. I usually always have a journal with me when visiting a museum, regardless of where the museum is. You see, when I look at art, when I read the little descriptions about the artist, the time period, the work, it catalyzes the flow of ideas. And I don't want to lose those ideas. I don't want them to go to waste. Nineteenth century English writer John Ruskin said that drawing and writing about beautiful places are the best way to understand them. Both actions force us to notice details we wouldn't normally notice, much less dwell on. Pausing for such a practice stands in contrast to the way many travel through a museum, rushing from one painting to the next, not taking the time to fully reflect, appreciate, and receive the power of what they are looking at. A visit to a wonderful museum or gallery should be transformative. The next time you visit a gallery or museum, if a work of art grabs your attention, open your journal and write about it. What you are feeling, the thoughts that arise from the experience before the experience is lost due to our faulty memories and the distractions of life. The ticket of admission should be an investment in ourselves. Writing is also a spiritual practice because through the practice of writing, particularly journaling, we come to know ourselves. Journaling makes us pay attention to ourselves, our thoughts, our buried ideas and aspirations, even our wounds that inevitably bubble up from some deep internal spring. Julia Cameron, the author of The Artist's Way, says, "The reward for attention is always healing. It may begin as the healing of a particular pain, the lost lover, the sickly child, the shattered dream. But what is healed, finally, is the pain that underlies all pain, the pain that we are all, as Rilke phrases it, unutterably alone. More than anything else, attention is an act of connection." Theologian Richard Niebuhr once said, "Pilgrims are poets who create by taking journeys." To awaken the inner artist is to awaken our spirit, the seeker, the inner pilgrim. And one of my favorite poets, T.S. Eliot, wrote, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." Friends, whenever we take a trip with spiritual intention, like a pilgrimage, we never return the same. And thus, we don't see the familiar the same. Home itself has changed. Julia Cameron also wrote in The Artist's Way, "Remember, there is a creative energy that wants to express itself through you." Do you believe that? So, for next week's Art Brunch, we will visit many places, but particularly this place, the Petit Palais in Paris. It is affectionately known as the Mini Louvre because of the span of its collection. And for the Art Brunch after that, on May 14th, we will take a trip to Montpellier in the south of France. We will visit this wonderful cathedral and also this sacred place, the Fabre Museum. The following week, we will travel east toward the beautiful perched village of St. Paul de Vence, where many famous artists has stayed and received food and lodging in exchange for their works. And while in this lovely town, we will visit the Fondation Mate Gallery, which is full of wonderful works from the 20th century. Works by Matisse and Chagall and Miro. And on May 28th, we will cross the English Channel to London, where I will actually broadcast Art Brunch from the Royal Air Force Museum in North London, of all places. Now, I haven't decided which museum in London we will visit and which I will present yet. We will then skip Sunday, June 4th, because I will probably be driving in a car around 9 a.m. on Sunday. But on June 11th, we will conclude our pilgrimage with reflections in the beautiful gardens of Europe. I will broadcast just after visiting one of them in Milan, Italy, the Parco Sempione, which you see here. It is part of the Sforza Castle complex. By then, I will also have visited some of the major gardens in London and Paris and Florence, so I should have some reasonable insight to share by that point. Artists and writers, and scientists and philosophers all frequented these wonderful urban gardens for contemplative reasons. Some of their greatest ideas came from walks down the pebbled lanes of these grand gardens. So gardens are a fitting place to conclude our journey because they are places of healing and contemplation and creativity. By then, I hope you will see the great value of designing your life with frequent pilgrimages. Obviously, most of them are going to be to places close to where you live. I hope you are excited about this journey. And for those of you who do want to dream a little, I will offer an art pilgrimage to Italy in 2024. I also would like to offer one in the United States, most likely to either Washington, D.C. or the Philadelphia, New York City corridor. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, I hope this presentation has whet your appetite for redesigning your life to include pilgrimages and maybe for some of you to dream big in 2024. Anyway, now I'll open up the floor for any questions or comments that you might have. The floor is open.